Councillor Gittins, can I hand over to yourself?
Yeah, certainly. Thanks, Morgan. And hi, I'm Louise Gittins. I'm leader of Cheshire West and Chester Council. So what we're going to be doing this morning is sharing our experiences about engaging virtually with local communities and stakeholders, both before it and during COVID-19. And I think what we've achieved really over the last 6 months is really, and it's probably been the same with all of you, we've all talked about doing more online, and this has really forced us into doing virtual communicating with our communities and different stakeholders. So we're going to, it is interactive, so we're going to just talk you through some of the things we've been doing, and please ask questions and comment, share your own experiences. So it's very much that sharing cooperative sort of way of viewing things. So joining me today is Councillor Bryan, who's our Cabinet Member for Climate Emergency, and Bev Wilson, who's our Senior Insight and Intelligence Manager. And they'll introduce themselves when they start their little sessions. So just a bit of context about Cheshire West and Chester. We're up part of the Cheshire and Merseyside region. We're on the Welsh border. Population of about 340,000 people, and a real mix of communities. So we've got the ancient city of Chester, which you're probably all familiar with the city centre rows, the amphitheatre, historic walls, but we've also got a lot of industrial areas and market towns as well. And we've got places like Ellesmere Port, where we see Vauxhalls, CF fertilisers, Stanlow Oil Refinery, and those things sort of help to make us one of the most polluting places in the whole country. But then we've got beautiful countryside. A third of the land is agricultural, and our border with Wales means that people go to and fro across the border every day for work. So Airbus is right on our border as well. But despite all the green leafiness, we're a borough of great contrasts, and we have areas of severe deprivation, and it's often hidden by the green and pleasant countryside that we see. And we have sort of 12 years life expectancy between our poorest and richest areas of the borough, and sometimes that can just be in a micro area of within a mile. But generally quality of life is good. So as a council, we declared a climate emergency in 2019, and then in October we're going to be declaring a poverty emergency, which is a new sort of route that we're taking. And if anyone's interested in that, we'll be able to send out information about why we're declaring a poverty emergency. So the Labour group is the largest party in the council. We've been in administration running it since 2015, but we don't have a majority. So we've engaging with various communities to work with them over the last year as part of our new council plan that we approved in February 2020 this year. And the plan's called Play Your Part to Thrive. And the key direction of this new plan is the play your part element. So really looking at how we interact with our communities, and how for each of our different priorities, the communities and residents, businesses can play their part in terms of moving forward over the next 4 years. And interestingly, the play your part bit, we were talking about that over a year ago, and now it seems to be the strapline for COVID-19. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to hand over to Bev, who's our Insight and Intelligence Manager, just to really talk through some of the approaches to online engagement that we've taken, and to talk through some of the lessons learned. So Bev, hopefully you're here somewhere. Yes, you are. I can see you. So do you want to run through your stuff now?
I'm not quite sure. My camera seems to have frozen, so they've got like a side shot of me. But I'm going to share my screen anyway, so that'll hopefully make it a bit more interesting than looking at me. So Cheshire West and Chester, as Councillor Gittins mentioned, developed a new council plan last year called Play Your Part to Thrive, and threaded right through that plan was community empowerment, and that was a huge element of that. what we wanted to do as part of that community empowerment program was to actually just revolutionise how we do consultation and engagement. So I'm hoping that people can now see a website that I've shared called Participate Now. I can't hear anyone, so I'm hoping
can see that.
Yeah, we can see it.
Great stuff, lovely. So we were trying to break away from our traditional methods to do something new and very different. We wanted to do something digital first, and we wanted to make sure we had something that worked on both a kind of mobile, a tablet, a PC, no matter what device people had. And we scoured the market, and we landed on a digital engagement platform called Engagement HQ. We branded it ourselves. We called it Participate Now. Participate being around, you know, taking part, you play your part, and now being the call to action. So that's kind of where the name came from. And what I'm going to do is just talk you through some of the key projects we've worked on, and some of the tools that are on this platform, and just kind of share our experiences. So the first consultation we did was actually on the council plan, Play Your Part. And traditionally, things like council plan and budget consultations are quite dry for the public. Financial data is very, very hard for people to digest, and it's just very, very difficult to engage with people. So what we did this time was we actually split it across 6 themes. So it's far more, hopefully, far more interesting to click on how can we tackle climate emergency than it is to click on something that says take part in budget consultation. And it worked really well. So we split it across different themes. We used videos of our cabinet members as well to try and get their message across, but that also gave our cabinet members ownership over their areas of responsibility. And we gave people different ways to take part. So here people could fill in a survey if they wanted to, or they could share their ideas. And we had a range of ideas boards that you know, really took off. So hopefully you can see as I'm flicking through, and I'm not making everybody's eyes go funny, but basically people started posting ideas and uploading pictures and so on, and it worked really well. And people could like ideas. If you can see this heart, I don't know if you can see my cursor moving around the screen. I'm just trying to highlight certain things, but people could like ideas as well. You do have the functionality with the site for people to comment on ideas, but we actually turned it off for this first project, partly because it was a pilot for us. We were trying to understand it, but also we didn't want people to put ideas up and then for somebody else to come on and go, well, that's a really rubbish idea, and then for it to put people off. So we kept it all quite kind of positive to start with. We also used a range of other tools, including quick polls. This is off at the moment because the consultation's closed, but we had little quick polls on each session, and we used this really effectively with social media. So we kind of pushed the quick poll out with social media and then got people into the site. We had hard copies available for people who couldn't take part online, and we had little toolkits, so councillors and community groups could take a toolkit, and then if they were working with residents, they could either do it on paper, or if they were in a venue that had internet access, what they could do was link to this site and take part online. So we described who was listening, and we described, you know, the little process around where our engagement was, so whether it was open, whether we were analysing it, or whether the findings were available, and how to get them when it was there. Unfortunately for us, the national election kicked in last year, and we were in Purda, so that kind of scuppered things a little bit. And we had to freeze the consultation, but nonetheless it actually worked really well as a pilot. I'm just going to go back home and show you a different consultation now, called Walk, Ride, Thrive. So one of the things we did with this was we worked with an organisation called Good for Nothing. I'm sure many of you will have heard of Good for Nothing. They're a grassroots network that bring together people with a whole range of different skills and abilities, and they try and solve problems and take local action. So they had a gig, Hack Chester it was called, all about active travel. They came up with this concept of Walk, Ride, Thrive, and the essence of a logo which our design team crafted into this. And then what we did was we asked people about walking and cycling routes, and it was very much linked into that active travel and what had happened during the pandemic, where people had kind of increased local cycling rates and walking rates, and we were trying to encourage that. We had some funding from the government for some temporary measures. We were asking people for their views, so they could take part and fill in the map, or they could fill in a survey depending on what they wanted. So the map basically shows the outline of the borough, and if I just scroll out, it just kind of condenses. You can hopefully, if it's not too small, you can see we've had over 1,000 ideas. And I'm just going to scroll back in, and I'm just going to pick one, and hopefully I'm going to pick a good one. But basically, as I scroll in, you can see, I'm just scrolling into Cheshire, you can see how many pins we've got here. You can see the river. I scroll in. I'm just going to pick one, and then this one is from Al3 Foster, I think that is. The gate here is very tight to the stone wall, really tricky to cycle through here. The gap is only one way for cyclists. So the pin is themed to a gate or a barrier. We've got a couple of key questions. What's the main challenge you face? Not enough space. What do you feel would improve things? More space for cyclists. Would you support these changes being made in the long term? Yes. So basically, this map just gives people a whole range. Oh, sorry, click off that. A whole range of different ways that they can take part, and we've themed the pins for different categories and so on. And it's worked really well. We've got kind of lots of people taking part in that. If I just scroll back and go back to the home page, people could also fill in a survey. And interestingly, a lot of people did actually choose to fill in a survey instead of using the map. Probably about kind of a third of people. So it shows you that actually some people don't want their comments in the public domain, or they're quite happy to tell the council, but they don't necessarily want it in an open platform, whereas other people are more happy to do that. So if I just go back quickly to the homepage, there's a range of lessons that we've learned doing these pilot projects. As you can see, we've got quite a lot of projects on there now. We've been going for about a year. But one of the things that we've learned is the look and feel is really key. So we've tried to make this look like it's not a council's website. It doesn't look as transactional as the usual council sites, and hopefully it looks quite friendly and like something you could quite intuitively click on. The other learning point is that the content is really, really important. Traditionally, the council, certainly our council, has liked to do a consultation with a weighty consultation document where you set out your stall and so on. And whilst a lot of people do need that detail, and we do need to describe how we've arrived at our thinking, people want something snappy and quick. So we've used videos. This is a carers consultation, carers strategy, and this is one of our carers actually encouraging other carers to take part and describing what the consultation's about. So the content's really important. We haven't necessarily got that quite right. I think we're still too weighty in terms of the words we're using, but we're getting there. It's a journey. The other thing is around that accessibility and thinking about where you place things on the web page and making sure you've got good web page design. And for people who do consultation, that's quite a new skill for us to try and pick up. The other thing I would say is that we've got a lot of tools. So this site offers us things like ideas boards, storyboards. It's got discussion forums, question and answer forums, surveys, all sorts of different tools. So what we're trying to do is to split a consultation across different tools. So you can see in this carer strategy, you can fill in a survey, you can share your ideas on an ideas board, you can share your experience on a storyboard, or you could speak to someone, you know. So this is for actually trying to reach out to people. They can take part in consultations, they can take part in telephone discussion groups and virtual focus groups and things like that. And we've got different sessions people can sign up in. So we're trying to give people a range of ways to take part in this. It takes quite a lot of judgment and a bit of skill to decide which tools to use and when to use them, and think about what data you're going to get back from those different tools and how you're going to analyse it. So one of our lessons is around, you know, thinking about that whole consultation journey for each project and thinking about how you're going to do that consultation and analysis and what tools you're doing. The other thing is mixing open and closed tools, because as we've learned, some people will rather fill in a survey and just tell the council rather than put their comment on an ideas board. I think the other thing I was going to mention is around moderation. So we have actually got thought quite carefully around the moderation and the privacy notices that we have here, because obviously I'm sure you'll all be familiar with GDPR. So the page is moderated, and our provider does do a level of moderation. We're trying to very much create a safe space, so we've asked people to kind of be kind. We're trying to make it feel friendly. We're also asking people not to share personal information. But the thing around the moderation is that the automated moderation, if you like, basically just stops any bad language or anything that's kind of defamatory or anything that was kind of racist, for example, that wouldn't get through. However, the automatic moderation doesn't account for where, for example, people might put something that you know you need to respond to. So one of our engagement activities was around COVID-19 and lockdown and how people were kind of sharing positive messages. But we did actually receive quite a sad story from somebody who put this in the public domain that described, you know, how they were really struggling with autism, they were lonely and isolated and so on, you know, kind of like concerned about their medication, and they just posted it. Now, we had already set up like a rota, if you like, for our staff to monitor the site to make sure that if anything got posted that we needed to respond to, we were there ready. So we immediately went back with something, you know, thank you for your story, Gus, lockdown can be tough, there's lots of support available, we'll get in touch with you directly. So we had actually made people register, and because we'd made people register, we had Gus's details to get back in touch. But you could also have a situation where a local issue goes viral over a weekend, you know, where people are populating ideas boards and you know, moving on social media. So you need to think carefully around that kind of moderation and monitoring of the site. And when you choose to ask people to register, you'll notice from the ideas boards, people don't need to register with their actual name, but they do have to give an email address. And that means we can get back in touch with people. So we've decided that where people are filling in a survey, they can just do that without registering. But where people are using the open tools to try and help it feel safe and to help us respond to some of these things, we're actually asking people to register to do that. The other thing really is quite key around communications campaigns. So the whole thing really needs good communications underpinning the whole of your consultation. We are doing different communication campaigns as we move through consultations. So where we've got different tools, we might promote them at different times. We might use the quick polls, as I've said, with social media. So we've learned a lot as we've gone through. I think one of the things that we've learned as well going through is that it does take a little bit of time to get right. You won't get it right every time. Through the pandemic as well, a lot more people are using digital environments, so this is getting more and more popular, and we are getting more and more requests from our colleagues to use this platform. It's working very well for us so far. I don't think there's any turning back either. You do need to have paper copies available and make sure that you're reaching out to people that are digitally excluded, but actually what we're trying to do is make sure those people are included. So we're trying to find ways to get devices for people and those sorts of things so they can take part online and help give them the skills to do so. So one of our next steps is developing super users, if you like, in teams outside of ours. So we want to develop the skills within our communications team, within our communities team that are doing engagement on the ground, with our regeneration team, for example, on local regeneration projects. And we're also going to be developing an online citizen panel using this platform. You can create closed spaces as well. So we're going to develop a closed space for a citizens panel, and we're also looking at perhaps closed spaces for staff groupings and things like that as well. So that's a quick whistle stop tour. I'll stop sharing, hand over to Councillor Bryan, who's going to describe to you about how we've been tackling our climate emergency.
Thanks, Bev, and thank you for being here. I'm the Cabinet Member for the Climate Emergency for Cheshire West, and we declared a climate emergency, like a lot of people, in May last year, and we quickly went to work, and we were quite lucky because we managed to commission Anthesis straight away to do our baseline studies, and they've been working closely with Manchester. So we were able to put a plan together pretty quickly, and we decided straight away because we as Louise mentioned before, we are the 4th highest emitters in the UK, and at any given point we use 5% of the UK's energy, which is a really high amount. We've got CF fertilizers, we've got Tata steel, we've got the largest glass factory in Europe, we've got really heavy industrial clusters in the area, which at the same time as it's quite daunting, it presents a big opportunity for us. because we're not far from technical expertise in terms of hydrogen development and potential carbon capture storage, because we're a salt county. We've got huge, vast caverns which could potentially be used for carbon capture and also hydrogen storage. So that's going to play a big part in moving forward. Our approach straight away was to be as inclusive as possible to pursue this agenda. We committed large amounts of capital towards it for the programme over the next 4 years, which is being identified at the moment. And we set up a climate emergency task force, which is a cross-party task force, which, funnily enough, like given the political makeup of our council, everyone gets on really well, and it's quite a decent way to thrash out ideas before we have to make decisions on them. And we incorporated the Chester Sustainability Forum, which was set up at the second to last, off the back of the second to last general election, which is an amalgamation of a huge amount of community groups that we've got around Cheshire. So we were quite fortunate in that sense, because we didn't really have to start the community committee and community committees straight away, because we already had one in essence. And we also set up a climate advisory board, which basically is a setup of all of the industry leaders in the area, key members of environmental groups, ranging from community activists, Friends of the Earth, through to chairs of various sustainability and transition networks. And that's worked really well, because we've kind of brought the community on board with this at every stage of this, in preparation for developing our council plan, which will be delivered to full council at the end of this year, which will basically spell out the programme that we've got to achieve carbon neutrality by 2035 as a borough, and 2035 as a council and 2045 as a borough. Because like all of the local authorities, our actual direct impact ours is 1.6%. I was listening to Oxford earlier, and theirs is only 1%. We're 1.6%, but so we've kind of brought everybody on board with this, and I'm sure every other council at the moment's recognised just what happens if you don't bring people on board with decisions such as active travel. So this is actually a really good example of community support of how we can tackle the climate emergency agenda together. To kick it all off, at the start of last year, we had I sent a letter to every school in Cheshire West requesting that they send what their thoughts were on how we could tackle the emergency, and how and we asked them to send in video blogs about how they think we could do it and how they'd like to be involved with it. And we've involved the Youth Senate at pretty much every point in the consultations and meetings. Morgan, have we got a video of... I'll carry on. I think we've got a video of what the responses were for the from the school children, and that's how we kicked off our climate emergency summit, because we're quite blessed in Cheshire, because we're the hosts of Chester Zoo. So we hosted our first climate emergency summit, which was attended by business leaders, political leaders, children. The Youth Senate put on some really good presentations, and this video is how we started it, if it works. Sorry, I need to activate something, I think. Morgan, do I need to...
Okay, is that working? I'm sharing it now, but...
I can't hear any noise.
Okay, 1 second. I'll just go into my settings.
So we started the conference, which was a great day of bringing everybody together to try and get a consensus for what we were going to do. And this video is how we started it. Well, this is actually a snapshot of a 5-minute video. I think this is a 30-second clip. And it was a really good way because we had pretty much all of the schools in Cheshire engaged and sent through these brilliant little video blogs. And they were quite sweet, and it really has played a part in how we've shaped the policy and how we'll continue to shape policy. So, oh, I can hear something. I think it needs to be a bit louder, Morgan.
Putting in more charging points for electric cars. This encourages more people to buy electric cars. Incentivizing local companies to encourage car share. How about committing to a 5-year plan to put in cycle routes in all the main roads? This would encourage people to use bikes and not cars, and they can travel green and safe. We all need to work together to solve this problem. We may only be little, but our message is big. It's not too late. And now!
Yeah, and that was a really good way of kind of disgracing all the business leaders in the area into kind of enacting now. And from there at Chester Zoo, we had multiple breakout sessions, and people would attendees would generally attend them all over the course of the day. We had really senior levels of the NHS getting involved, and they've since declared their own climate emergency locally. And it was just a really good event, and everybody got stuck in, and we had a vegetarian lunch, and it was a really good start to everything. And from there, we've had subsequent task force meetings with the elected members and the special advisory panel, and focusing on different areas of the carbon reduction plan and the long-term carbon plan that, as I said before, will be presented to full council in December. Basically trying to iron out the various different interventions that we can make, which will be a science-led approach matching interventions and statistical data that was analysed by Anthesis, but trying to make it a bit more accessible than just numbers versus actions. So that's where we're up to at the moment, and we've got some fantastic officers who've pulled together some stuff very quickly over the course of the past year and a half, and I think we're in a real position now to make some positive change. So I think I go back to Louise at this point, and then if I can answer any questions after.
That's great, Matt, and thank you. And needless to say, all these meetings have since gone online, and actually in terms of climate emergency, they probably need to stay online even when we get through COVID, because we haven't got people driving around the borough and trying to get to one place at once. So I think that's been a really good success there. So what I thought was, if anyone's got any questions they wanted to ask, or if you've got any of your own examples about how you've sort of developed online hubs or how you've been engaging with your communities during lockdown, I thought we could just have a general sort of discussion now. So has anybody got any questions, first of all, that they want to ask? No? Anything? No?
In fact, okay. I could probably expand a bit on the online stuff if you want, Louise.
Yeah, I was just going to talk about some of the other stuff we've been doing online. So we've set up we've all got COVID advisory boards. So ours is a public meeting, and it's been really helpful in terms of sharing messages, and certainly over the last couple of weeks we've been holding them. Well, we had 2 last week, and the number of residents that are watching now is really increasing. So we're having an interactive one tomorrow, where we're running it like a webinar so that residents can ask questions. They did this in Warrington, and they had about 1,500 people participating in it. So it's sort of choosing the subjects that will get people's attention, and I think COVID is a good opportunity to do that. We've also set up a community champions network. I sit on the National Advisory Board for COVID. We're one of the 11 beacon councils, as Nadine Dorris described us. And Newham had set up a really good community health champions model at the start of COVID. So we've implemented our own sort of version of that. And we've been having online events with them. And it was the first one, it was a bit scary really, because it was done more like, it was in Microsoft Teams. So it was a meeting, we had about 30 community champions. And I was chairing it, and I was slightly nervous that they'd start shouting at me or something, but it was a really good interactive chatty meeting. And then yesterday we've got loads of parish and town councils across Cheshire West. So we had a parish and town council event online, and actually everyone was really nice and friendly. So I think there's something about online that people behave themselves in a better way than they might do in a room where they start shouting. So just wondered about, I don't know which councils we've got on board here. I'm presuming you're all councillors. I can see a councillor, Janice Long, but I'm presuming you're all from different councils. So has anybody got anything they want to share about what they've been doing?
As you name check me, should I actually butt in?
Yeah, go on.
Well, we've been doing a mixture of online meetings. It's a learning process. I wouldn't say we've got it perfect by any means, but I do have some people who refuse to join in online meetings because they just don't like them. And once this all finishes, there'll be the demand for the hybrid meeting, where some of us will be online, some people will be in the room. And that's going to be difficult to set up. But I just wanted to raise the issue of the climate impact of online meetings. Everyone says, oh, they're better than driving to a meeting, but they're not free of pollution, etc. And I think we actually need to work out how much they are having an impact, because they're not neutral when it comes to an inroad into the environment. And I think that's something, the trap we're falling into, thinking, oh, because it's online, it's perfectly okay. You know, there's sometimes worse online stuff. You know, you download a video, it's worse than driving your family of 4 to the cinema, I gather. So we need to get the messaging right on that one.
Yeah, I think Matt might have done a bit of work on that. Have you got any, because he is a bit of a geek when it comes to climate. So
yeah, I certainly think it's beneficial to not have everybody driving for a meeting for 20 minutes. And you're right by saying the data storage, there is a massive carbon cost to it. I don't think it's negligible compared to the amount of carbon that would be created by everybody but a full council meeting driving. But we at the start of this, we trained all of our officers and councillors in carbon literacy training, and I was fairly up to speed. But one of the facts that I didn't know, and I was quite surprised about, was that an attachment to an email actually has a higher carbon cost than a carrier bag. And so there is carbon costings do need to be taken into account, and that's something that our carbon reduction team will be doing, and not only from a meeting point of view, but from a working from home point of view, through to planning standards, to materials. That carbon needs to be, and subsequent carbon creation needs to be at the heart of every decision made across the council, and that's one of the golden threads, which is going to be looking through our procurement process, because the quickest thing to get your carbon costs down is by procuring in the right way, and that's an ongoing process at the moment, which will form part of the main plan for the end of the year.
Does that help, Janice?
Did a few issues to take back, because also I'm a London councillor, so a lot of our councillors, we travel on the tube or the bus, so we don't have the distances to travel. But it can still be awkward for some people if you're not on the right bus route, because I know that outside London it's a no-brainer actually having online meetings, you know, and the time they've saved because you don't have that journey time.
Yeah.
So you can you can jump from one meeting to another, and you've got to plan your meetings. You can say yes to too many.
Yeah.
I think that's the problem with online. You've got to learn to say no. If you wouldn't have been going to all these meetings sometimes if you had to travel there. So, do a bit of diary management and have a breather and think about the meeting you've just been in.
No, that's true. Actually, you sort of have to rush from one to the other, and you don't have that time to switch off and switch on again. But for us, I live in the north of the borough, and we have our full council meetings at a place called Winsford that is over by the M6. So it's sort of, on a good day, it'll take 45 minutes, but on a bad day, it can take over an hour. So, that's a 2-hour journey time, which when you're having a council meeting at night, I wasn't getting in sort of 11:30. So, I think there's a lot to be said, but it's that sort of balance, I think. And I think the other thing I've noticed, when we have had online meetings with residents, more attend online than they do if you have, in the town hall or a community centre. You might get sort of the usual people turning up, but we found a lot more people are engaging with us in our meetings as well, which is good. So has anybody got anything else they want to share? I'm sure you've got some amazing stuff that you're doing, because we are cooperative councils and we do amazing things.
I've got a question about the Cheshire website, because they said it's got completely different branding. So how do you find people usually access it? Is it direct to the site, or do they go via the council's main website?
Bev, can you answer that one?
Yeah, sure. So in terms of the Participate Now, you can do either. So we would tend to push, there is kind of a place on the council website where you can just access it straight away. But also what we're trying to do is to make sure that when we communicate, we actually use different URLs. So if we send out a briefing note to all our councillors, I'm giving away secrets now. When we send a briefing note to all our councillors, we have one URL. When we send something out to the press, we have a different URL. When we send something to our community groups, like a cascade to like maybe 1,000 community and voluntary groups, we have a different URL. They all point to exactly the same place. But we can track and see how effective our communications have been, and see if councillors have clicked on it, see if community groups have clicked on it, see if the press has drummed up support, and so on. So we tend to use links in quite a crafty way in our consultation engagement. So there we go.
Oh, so you know how many councillors have clicked on? Yeah.
And how many have opened it?
Yeah, we can do all of that. It's really helpful.
And I must have, our new sort of the Participate Now stuff, the colours are really bright and vibrant, there's good pictures, it's interactive, but actually our main council website is pretty boring, and it needs to sort of be brought up to the standard we've set ourselves with the new participatory pages, because it's what people see when they first land somewhere that makes a difference and gives that impression. It's like if someone walks through the door, isn't it? It's those sort of first impressions, not always the right impression, but it is important.
One of the when we started all the climate emergency response, we decided straight away it'd be really useful for us to have a single point of access for accessing all the information, because there's such a huge amount of info there. We thought it'd be useful to have it. So we quite simply, if you put climate emergency quack into Google, it comes up with that single page. I don't know if Bev's got it about. So it's not as kind of interactively advanced as the stuff Bev's shown you, but it's really useful for when you're having conversations with people. And quite often people know an awful lot more than yourself, dealing with scientists and experts and real kind of specialists in the field. So it is useful for to have that ease of access of all of the information at the same time, as long as it's being catalogued properly. And this is kept up to date. And we've got a climate emergency newsletter that goes out every month, which that's quite friendly stuff that doesn't take an awful lot of expertise to understand. That's really accessible stuff on nice fluffy schemes that people can engage with. But in that same breath, if you do want a bit more information, you can delve a bit deeper and click on our documents and resources centre, and you can get access to absolutely everything involved with our response. When we went out to consultation about our approach, we had really good feedback from residents, community groups, and we had 110 responses, which doesn't sound like a huge amount when you compare that to the response from about the Walk, Pride, Thrive consultation with the drag and drop. But we had 110 really high quality consultation responses, and the vast majority of those were from community groups, which are made up of anything from 5 to 50 people. So they were really kind of scientific reports on the area, which have also formed part of the response, and it's been that's been a really useful way of guiding officers, and it'll be again, it will be a really important way of guiding our policy decisions towards the end of the year.
Anybody got any other observations or wants to share anything? Everyone's very shy. I'm just putting our contact details in the chat box. So if you want to get in touch about anything, or if any of your officers want to get in touch with our team, who are fantastic, I have to say, then please do. We're happy to share, and Bev, I'm sure, has got lots more secrets that she could share about how she monitors what councillors do. So that would be great. So I think it is 12 o'clock. Are we coming to the end of this session now?
We officially have 10 more minutes, but you can end the session early if you want. I've just added in the chat links to the full programme, and this afternoon we're going to have fringe sessions that are specific to your membership type. So if you just copy, unfortunately, for some reason Zoom chat doesn't allow you to click on links, so you just have to copy and paste that into your browser. And then you can go off to whichever fringe you want if you would like to end the session now, or it's up to you. Okay, well, I think we've done all our talking and shared things, so unless anybody else wants to come in, we could just sit in silence, but perhaps not.
Well, just
one more question then.
Yeah, go on, Janice. Thank you.
Because this has all been about people who've got access to IT, etc. But how are you reaching the people who, you know, the term digital exclusion is the big phrase in my bubble. So how do you contact those people and either persuade them to go online or contact them via other forms?
Yeah, so we have
measure whether you're reaching them or not with this current tool that's being used.
Bev, can you answer that? Because I know we've seen our number of people accessing things via digital has gone through the roof, really. So, and we can talk about the other bits as well.
Yeah, so it has. So the people accessing things digitally has increased massively. However, we have got multiple methods. So along with the engagement platform, we would also make sure that people had different ways of taking part. So we would have a paper backup. So people could say have a hard copy of a questionnaire. Now traditionally we will have put those in libraries and key buildings and had them available on request, or maybe given like boxes to certain groups that we know might need to take part in that way. However, obviously in the current climate, you don't really want to leave questionnaires around for people to physically pick up, because that's not a very safe way in the COVID world. But we will have copies available on request if people telephone. We've also done things like telephone focus groups. So particularly, for example, the carers consultation, and we've had something around charging for adult social care, which you can imagine those client groups may not necessarily all be online. So we have had almost like telephone slots people can call at a certain time slot. And then speak to somebody over the phone and give their views and share their experiences. So we've had a backup for everything pretty much.
And how do they know there's actually a consultation on in the first place if they've not got
Yes.
access to IT?
So we would be using the press as well. So we make sure there are press releases available, as well as obviously social media for those people who are online. But we would also rely on our community groups and our networks to make sure the message is out there. So whilst we might communicate with them digitally, they will have their own methods of communicating with their kind of key service users, if you like. So we will have kind of multiple ways. And in some cases, we might actually post a questionnaire to people. And we've gone back to posting questionnaires a little bit. Not great for climate, but it depends on the consultation. You wouldn't do that for something like the council's budget consultation, where it's very much open to all. But for example, for certain groups that we think might be affected by a service change, then we're writing to them to let them know that there's a proposed change planned, and to get, this is how they can give their views. We wouldn't be doing that en masse. It would be kind of very, very targeted, if you see what I mean. So we are still doing that very targeted approach to make sure people who need to understand about potential change can give their views back to us.
And I think we've really sort of, COVID has brought us much closer with our community and voluntary groups across the borough. So we've sort of got a cascade now through them. They're part of our, when we set up our first sort of cells, when COVID lockdown first happened, we had a community cell. So we have our dialogue has actually really improved with those community and voluntary organisations who come together under a sort of a sector leadership board. So it's really, it's cascading, isn't it? If you've got us at the top with the portal, it's all those different methods, and you almost have to draw a picture of it to make sure that you get everyone covered. So people like where I am, we've got something called Neston Angels, who are a befriending group who go out and do shopping for people. So they're another way to get messages out to local people who might be digitally excluded. But it's not just older people, it's, poverty has an impact on that as well. So, it's always going to be a challenge, but I think I was actually surprised at the numbers of people who've now been forced into using digital methods. My mum's 91 and she'd rather have FaceTime phone call with me than me going round to see her. So, there's loads of different ways that we can try and encourage people to be more digitally excluded, but it will be a challenge. I don't know if anyone's found a solution to that that's still on the call. Janice, what do you do?
What, to get hold of people?
Yeah,
well, I think we're still working on a proper comms programme, because I know actually a lot of people who haven't even signed up to our e-alerts, which give a lot of information, and they say, oh, how do I take my waste to the dump? Well, it's all on the e-alert, but the intelligent people haven't signed up to an email even. There's a barrier sometimes you've got to get over. It's the council, we don't want to listen to them.
Yeah, very much so.
It's not just older people that are affected. As Louise said, poverty is a big barrier. And during COVID, when those encrypted government laptops arrived, that was a huge barrier for kids in poverty learning. In fact, we had to send them back through our own IT departments to make them suitable for use, which delayed their education by further weeks. But yeah, it's never going to be ideal. But if you can get...
Yeah, I'd agree. I don't think it is age. The number of Zoom calls I've been on where we're all of a certain age, so I don't think it's age that restricts access. It's the ability to pay for it.
Yeah.
Whether it's the gadget or the Wi-Fi access, whatever. I think that's what stops some people being able to use it. It's not an age factor.
Yeah. I'd agree. Definitely.
And the health service is plugging it, so some people have been forced into it, and it's good on both sides. But not having to schlep for a hospital appointment sometimes can be a good thing for people. You sit there for hours. How are you? Fine, thank you. Goodbye. Whereas a 2 minutes online call, has saved you the time and effort, and you've both achieved what you wanted. So it's going to be worked on. But the people who are pushing it on us have got to start listening as well.
Yeah,
Digital by choice was something I heard on one call I was on, rather than just digital by default. It's got to be good enough for you want to use it.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
has, hasn't it? Made a note of that.
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah. Excellent.
Okey-dokes. Right, I think it is 10 past now, so I think we've come to a natural halt. So thanks everybody who's listened. Hope we've been of help, and all our contact details are at the side if anyone wants to get in touch, and enjoy the rest of the conference.